Hello team, welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video with myself, Jonathan MS Pearce. Massive apologies, I just did a whole video earlier on and it had no sound. As many of you know, I'm on holiday at the moment and I've just got over, I think, probably COVID. I was just rounded a corner yesterday, went out for a lovely snorkeling day out of activities with my family. I was helped by the locals here, like just with my mobility being rubbish, but actually it was improved loads yesterday. And I was like, yes, yes, yes. And then I got a dicky tummy last night and now can't walk again. I'm like, so I've been in my room all day. I didn't even go to breakfast. So anyway, whatever, whinging, we're talking about war in Ukraine, but I just like don't have the patience for having done a whole 1.5 videos, and it was halfway through my second video that I realized we've moved rooms in the hotel, um and unplugging the stuff meant that I had to reset it all anyway. Hello, guys. We'll go through the Ukrainian General Staff figures for the Russian losses for the day before. All the usual caveats apply. And we have 1,040 personnel lost for the for the Russian, sorry, for the day before. That is above 1,000. That's pretty acceptable, I guess, for this time. Remember, these are human beings we're talking about, not merely numbers. 4 tanks and 4 troop carrying AFVs. In my first video, I was like, "Oh, 4 tanks," as if that was like a big number because we're so used to seeing very few in these categories. 47 artillery systems is almost twice the daily average, so it's a pretty good haul in that category. 1 multiple launch rocket system, 130 vehicles and fuel tanks. Pretty good number there as well, and that shows I think the Russians are relying on these unarmored vehicles to do their attacking work. Now, Russian propagandist Anastasia Kashevarova, who is actually a very pro-Russian sort of evil Gherkin type, um, not overtly critical in the way Gherkin is, but does highlight some real issues within the Russian army, and they are very useful. What she observes, absolutely on point. Here she has something else to say, so let's go through that. So here she says, well, Max 25 says, Russian propagandist Kashevarova reveals in a new way the peculiarities of life in the second army of the world and warns that the epidemic of hepatitis and HIV in the Russian troops will spread to the whole of Russia. The epidemic began, I reported on this recently, when convicts began to be recruited for the war. So it originated with HIV in the prison system. In fact, HIV has long been moving down the ranks of the heroes of the SVO since the beginning of the full-scale war. The number of infections has increased by 2,000% since the beginning of the war. This is due to 2 reasons: unprotected sexual intercourse and drug use in the Russian army, where traditional values prevail. So that is a challenge for the Russian troops. Here we have the Russian loss lists. And there's not too much to talk about in these. Take out the surveillance and com for both sides, and you get probably about the same, really. We not to say it's not important. Some people saying on the threads, don't discount these. Yeah, absolutely. But a Starlink is going to be $300, and that's easily replaceable, really, compared to an infantry fighting vehicle or piece of artillery. So, yeah, it is an issue to lose all this stuff, but I think it is invariably much easier to replace it than it is to replace a Bradley infantry fighting vehicle. We have half a dozen drones, UGVs, sorry, unmanned ground vehicles, 3 boats, 1 sunk, 1 destroyed, 1 damaged, a couple of bits of artillery damaged, 3 tanks, 2 T-64s have retrievably lost, a couple of infantry fighting vehicles, old Russian ones. We've got about 9, by the looks of it, various types of AFV, APC, MRAP mobility vehicles. Got an FV-103 Spartan, UK provided one there. Most of them in these categories irretrievably lost, and then we're down to civilian vehicles, quite a few of them, most of them destroyed for the Ukrainians, but nothing too crazy. And then when we go to the Russian losses, I'd say somewhat similar, actually. The balance is slightly different here. Engineering vehicle, a single UGV, and then quite a lot of artillery, including a BM-21 Grad destroyed, and might be the one we're just about to look at, and 1 damaged as well. The Russians have lost quite a few BM-21 Grads recently. The Ukrainians seem to be doing a good job on those multiple launch rocket systems. We've got Type 75 MRL. I can't remember if that's a North Korean one or whether that is a Chinese little sort of trailer type one. Anyway, that's on the list. D30s, quite a few howitzers, and then we're down to a couple of tanks, single IFV, single AFV, a couple of IMVs, lots of Vs in there, lots of vehicles. So then on to trucks, quite a few trucks, a number of motorcycles, for a quad and a buggy on the ATV list, and then down to civilian vehicles. Most damaged rather than destroyed, though, for the Russians there. So, yeah, six of one, half a dozen of the other, really. Uh, I think there. We'll go on to reminding ourselves of what I claimed the other day, that the Ukrainians had succeeded in the sabotage of a Mi-28N. I can't remember if that's is that a naval version of the Mi-28. No, because that might be the electronic warfare version. Anyway, this was 550 kilometers from Ukraine. I didn't realize it's so deep into Russia, but there's a whole Euromaidan press article on this. The initial video I showed you had some guy going and planting explosives on the underside of the helicopter. Then there are other, third party, well, I don't know if you can confirm definitely the helicopter exploded. There were explosions at the site, as according to the locals and whatnot. So one presumes that the helicopter is kaput, and it was destroyed at a key Russian military hub, a good 550 kilometers behind their line. So that is, one would presume, using a pro-Ukrainian saboteur very far into Russia. Good stuff there from the Ukrainians. Now, we go on to another Primari unit montage video of some really high value bits of kit. Remember, I've shown you these usually thermal images, videos of big expensive radars, radar systems, and surface-to-air missile systems being destroyed by the Ukrainians, usually in Crimea. Well, it's the same unit that's come out with another video that shows quite a lot of kit being destroyed. So supposedly a landing ship was hit. 3 radars, a Nebo, a Podlot K1, and a 96LE radar, I think, of the S400 surface-to-air missile system. And we also, in the video, it talks about uh, a Su-30, I think, flying in the background, but I don't know that anything is done about that. But yeah, it would be great if you could add a plane to that list too. But anyway, a really high value set of equipment here. Let's now look at the video. It will no doubt try and play some funky music. So here at the beginning, we see the drone here survive 5 different Pantsir S1 missile interception attempts. These are, I'm sure they must be fairly expensive, certainly more expensive than the drone, I would have thought, these missiles. And it survives 5 of them as they try and take down the drone. And then we have some of these domes. Here is a Nebo sitting inside one of those domes. So there are claims that the Russians are hiding equipment inside these kind of radar domes that are part of their aerospace bases and whatnot. That are there. There's your plane in the background flying, and it labels it here. So I don't know why it would label it. It's just seeing it in the background. I mean, kind of so what? Unless I'm sure that's the Su-30 SM there. So that is, yeah, that is a plane that might well have been taken out by one of these drones if it has the ability to fire a Manpads rocket, but I don't know. What we are more certain of is these ground targets being hit, and that's why you don't see that Su-30 listed, I guess, on. But here, yeah, there it is, Su-30 SM again. Yeah, and here's a radar system for this S400. Of course, you'd rather take out the radar than the launcher because the launcher needs a radar in order to acquire the target. The radar, you'll have a battery of launchers contingent upon a single radar. Take out the radar, that's a bit of kit that you aren't going to be able to replace easily. And then a bunch of domes being here and a landing craft as well thrown into that video too. So it's a really significant video of losses there for the Russians. The Ukrainians doing a good job. That Primary unit really coming up the goods. And as Special Khrushchev Cat says, Ukrainian drone evaded 5 interception attempts by the Russian Pantsir S1 air defense system on it, while the video shows all these other bits of kit being taken out, including that Project 02510, BK-16 landing craft that was at least hit. Then we have a drone dropping a PTM2. I think this anti-tank mine is one that fires a rocket off from the side rather than being a mine that is, although it seems to land it in the middle of the road there. I don't know. Anyway, rather than being one of these triggered by weight of the vehicle going over it. Anyway, the the Grad, sorry, not Brad, the Grad fundamentally disassembles there. That is a successful destruction of a multiple launch rocket system. Lots of aviation videos out generally. Here's one that is slightly maybe more meaningful. The Ukrainian aviation has destroyed the command headquarters of the assault regiment of the Russians, a 98th Guards Airborne Division in occupied Bakhmut. And that is hopefully good news for the Ukrainians there taking out a command node. Uh, we also hear a pretty awesome story. I think this is really important, actually, coming from Germany. So, Major General Mike Keller, Deputy Commander of NATO Security Assistance and Training for Ukraine, said in an interview with FAZ that a few months ago, Russia managed to severely damage a MIM-104 Patriot radar unit in Ukraine. It was brought back to Germany, where the industry determined that it's a total loss, since it would take a few years to replace it with a new one. German Luftwaffe experts tried to repair it themselves and actually managed to accomplish it by spending 16 hours a day from Monday to Saturday. In July, the radar unit was delivered back to Ukraine and is already operational. Just last week, the first Russian target was intercepted by utilizing this very radar unit. And I asked German aid, how long was it out for? Like, how long did it take them to fix it? And he said it's difficult to know because it depends how you interpret what the guy said. His exact words were they worked 16-hour shifts from Monday to Saturday, and in July we delivered the radar back to Ukraine. So you can interpret that as taking 1 week, 6 days, Monday to Saturday, to fix, or that could be representative of Monday to Saturday over a prolonged period, but you don't know how long that period was. So he said, like, technically 1 week. Now, if that's true, that's absolutely fantastic that without having to send a Patriot radar back to the US, they were able to fix one up and it is now operational and functioning. Fantastic support from Germany there. Ukraine's drone, the Shark, which is somewhat, I guess, analogous to the Orlan or Zala Supercam drones, these reconnaissance drones, is correcting a strike on the occupiers as far as Mariupol here. That's 110 kilometers from the front line. If Ukraine is able to operate uh, reconnaissance drones right over Mariupol, that is amazing. Um, and we've said this before about Russians doing it over, say, Mykolaiv, Zaporizhia cities. The Ukrainians need to really do something about the Russian reconnaissance drones. They've now developed interceptor drones. The Russians may be behind a curve here, and if the Ukrainians have done a really good job of attriting Russian air defenses, like we've seen them been doing over the past months and whatnot, and really since the May 23 counteroffensive, then it could be that reconnaissance drones have the ability to operate with something close to impunity. I doubt it's that good, but clearly they're able to get through to Mariupol there. Now, talking about radar coverage, Russia's air force can barely see Ukraine coming, says the Euromaidan Press. Ukraine's strikes have cut Russia's A-50U fleet. So these are the big AWACS plays. Remember, they lost quite a few of them, two of them around Mariupol, Berdyansk area, and across the Sea of Azov there into Russia last year, I think it was. And then you had maybe some operational, maybe they weren't operational, taken out in Operation Spiderweb, or at least damaged. Ukraine strikes have cut Russia's A-50U fleet to just 4 planes, according to them, 2 or 3 near the front, and still not enough. And that really aids Ukraine's use of aviation. And you're starting to see F-16s and MiGs and Sukhois get closer to providing close air support, etc., etc. I don't know. That would be great. And we have the third bridge blown in fairly quick succession here, at least the third that I've seen anyway. And the question is, who planted these mines? Some have theorized that the Russians planted these mines on the bridges in case they needed to blow their own bridges inside Russia if the Ukraine is attacked. Others say that these are planted by the Ukrainians with deep reconnaissance groups or whatever, doing sabotage work, and then the drones coming in sometime later and triggering the explosions, the mines, so that in this case a bridge is absolutely shellacked. So fiber optics FPV drone flies under a Russian bridge. So fiber optics is not going to be crazy. distance from the from the, I guess it is a front line, from the border, so maybe 20 kilometers. Uh, detonates planted TM62 mines, bringing down the entire bridge. That's really good news for the Ukrainians, and that hurts the Russian logistics there. Right, we're going to go on to distant strikes. And last night, sorry this is so late in the day, most of you will probably know this already, 112 drones were launched. So fairly sizable, but actually not. We're not seeing, like I said before, your 400, 500, 700 drones and missiles that the Russians have been able to send on occasion. 23 of them uh, got through. So 89 intercepts. That's a percentage interception rate of 79%, which is not the worst, not the best. Main areas of Russian emphasis were Dnipro and then down to Kryvyi Rih. Some more attack drones shot down, said Tim White at the time last night. But there are probably 2 impact sites in Dnipro. He talks about some strikes in Russia there. Many other explosions in Dnipro. Some fires burning the city. Buildings on fire in the Vazikivka area near the regional border with Zaporizhia. That they're predominantly residential areas were struck. Novorossiysk, the Russian naval base, there, targeted with both aerial and sea drones, USVs. So anyway, Dnipro was the main focus for the Russians, and then, as I mentioned, they did go on to Kryvyi Rih. Here's some images coming out from Dnipropetrovsk, where it was the most badly hit during the overnight attacks, with 13 people being injured there. 13 high-rise buildings were damaged in a residential area of Dnipro. Many were left without electricity, water, or windows. A few with no home at all. And some images there that you can peruse at your leisure. But yeah, at one point, the drone swarm in Dnipropetrovsk resembled the equally unwelcome locust invasion in the region. So they really are swarming these drones. I showed you a video the other day of the Russians flying their drones one after the other. Um, so I don't know what's going on there. Hopefully, you were able to see all my stuff. So yeah, I counted 7 in that particular video. Uh, um, but yeah. So Russian propagandists openly call the strike on the Olive. So this is going back a couple of nights, where the Russians struck a gas compressor station across the Danube River from Romania on the uh, banks of the Danube, or close to, in the Odessa region. The Russian propagandists are openly calling the strike on Olivka gas compressor station a signal from Moscow to Aliyev. So Aliyev is the president of Azerbaijan, and this is a system that, in this station, test volumes of Azerbaijani gas under an agreement between Naftogaz and Sokar was being delivered from Azerbaijan. And of course, Azerbaijan and Russia are having this big spat at the moment, and it could well be that there's a very political statement going on there from the Russians. Okay, now to Ukraine's work in Russia. Um, General Staff confirmed they hit an oil refinery. This is in the Krasnodar region, called the Afipsky oil facility. There have been many attempts to hit it, maybe the first proven strike in a year. And there are a lot of videos coming out. And this makes me think that when we don't hear about battle damages assessment, and some people say that's because of OPSEC, improved OPSEC, it's not always the case, because I think videos do easily come out of strikes on Russia. Many photos and videos from the fire at Afipsky, which is 30 kilometers from Krasnodar city. The Afipsky refinery processes over 2% of Russia's entire refining volume annually. Ukraine says its drone strikes caused a fire at the technological installation for processing gas condensate, gas or condensate. Telegram channel Exile Nova thinks the primary naphtha refining unit is on fire here. Okay, and then we have the oil refinery targeted early today has a capacity of 7 million tons a year. That's another bit of footage of the refinery on fire, and several more there for you to check out. So success for the Ukrainians there, really hurting the Russians' ability to make money out of their hydrocarbons industry, and indeed there has been a spike in prices for Russian consumers. Russian Telegram channels report a drone attack on Afipsky. There's also fire at a military unit in Slavyansk na Kubani in Krasnodar region as well. So that's another strike. That's where the oil refinery is, not too far from Ukraine, just across the Sea of Azov and into Krasnodar region. There's quite a few oil facilities there that have been hit over the course of the war. Then here we have another image from Tendar. Oh no, Special Kherson Cat that says a map of the Russian oil refineries recently struck following the renewed wave of Ukrainian strikes. And I think Ukraine have been given a green light here and they are going for it. So we saw just the other night Ryazan struck and then Novokubishevsk, 8 million tons, 17 million tons at Ryazan and 7 million tons at Afitsky. Okay, moving on. We have Volgograd region was struck Surovikino. There were reports that something was on fire near the railway depot, so it could be the railway depot there. Another video from Surovikino in Volgograd region. The railway here is on a straight line to Rostov region and then on to the occupied eastern part of Ukraine. I saw an Intel Schizo map of all the places that Ukraine had struck along this railway line recently, and they have really been going to town on that particular logistics line for the Russians. So I think the Russians are going to be hurting. Yeah, this is some imagery coming from Kryvyi Rih. So that was air defense was very busy in Kryvyi Rih as well, and big fire raging in Dnipro. So Dnipro took a bit of a pummeling last night. But what's going on? This is what happens when you can't feel your fingers. Anyway, there we go. Um, right, just seeing. Yeah, following videos from last night. They were quickly geolocated to Surovikino railway station. The governor of Volgograd was forced to admit a drone attack. He says there was a small fire here in an administrative building, but no major damage. It looks slightly bigger than a small fire there, I would say. But also interestingly, the governor of Volgograd region says drone debris hit the huge Maxim Gorky station west of the city. As you can see from the Google pics, it's a very big depot junction and a route for cargo. So you would imagine Ukraine might be looking at targeting something like that. Okay. Then, as mentioned, there was a place in Slavyansk on Kuban, or Slavyansk na Kubani, that was struck. It's the supposedly fuel and lubricants depot for the 76th Separate Repair and Recovery Battalion's military base in that settlement. So the Ukrainians were somewhat busy last night, and there were claims. So, although I say no battle damage assessment might intimate that the Russians are getting much better at shooting down drones. I think there are some times where you don't get any BDA, that people don't record things, and they're often around places like the Primari video that we saw earlier. Those kind of attacks on military pieces of equipment, radars that are out in the middle of nowhere. You're not going to get people nearby. Here's an example potentially. So meanwhile, the hot summer continues in Crimea. Smoke can be seen in the mountains near Sudak. Russian channels report that at least 9 Storm Shadow cruise missiles hit the peninsula last night. Now, take that with a pinch of salt. The Russians often claim that Storm Shadows are on their way, and I don't think it is often the case. But they claimed last night that the Ukrainians sent a bunch of Storm Shadows. So there you go. Another satellite reveal, this time of Ukraine's attack on the Primorsko-Akhtarsk airfield 5 nights ago. Telegram channel Cyber Boroshno concludes warehouses of Shahed drones were destroyed, while another area for storing aircraft missiles was badly damaged. Drone launch pads were also likely damaged. This is a very major site for Russian launches of drones, of their Shahed drones. Primorsko-Akhtarsk. Weird thing, I was a bit delirious when I woke up this morning, feeling not very well, and I woke up with Primorsko-Akhtarsk in my head, just going around. I don't know why. Anyway, that's how cool I am. So moving on to other bits and pieces, the deficit could increase to 6 to 9 trillion rubles. The government will rewrite the budget for the second time in a year due to a drop in raw materials revenues. Wow. The deficit is obviously not looking good for the Russians, and that's because the economy is tanking. And this could be forcing Russia's hand in terms of negotiations, although much more on that in a video I mostly recorded, but I have to re-record again just shortly. I will do it shortly after this video. Washington Post. No, we're going to come to that later, actually. That will be one of the last things. We're going to continue on the economic topic here where the budget is not looking good. So this is Evgen Istrubin. We're looking at the red line here. It's tanking, and we're in 2025, and we're in July. And as you can see, all the other years have a really big dip. There must be something that goes on with regard to expenditure in the Russian economy in November and December. If that happens here, I mean, it's going to be right down in the negative, maybe -10 at this rate. So this is a budget surplus or deficit. The deficit, as you can see, it never even started above zero, which is up here. This year, nor in 2023. 2024 was slightly better, although still really barely got above zero, and that's because, of course, it's going to be somewhat dependent on the price of oil and gas. Um, but yeah, just not looking good for the Russian economy. Uh, Deficit yeah, it's in trouble. So there you go. We have the Americans then sort of realizing that this is actually the case. Now, uh, again, you know, the frustration here is that they should have been saying stuff like this on January the 21st. It's about the economy. It's the economy, stupid. US says tariffs may be forcing Putin to reconsider stance in Ukraine peace talks. President Trump has made it clear that he's willing and capable of moving forward on some economic sanctions actions. Sorry, US State Department spokesperson Tammy Bruce said. So yeah, uh, brilliant. Why have you wasted 6 months getting to this point? You should have known this. I get really frustrated that you and I, people just sitting on the internet, um, learning about the war in Ukraine, we knew more about Russia's predicament and the dilemma that they'll be put in than the Trump administration and all their experts. Like, why is that? Just these guys are unserious about, they may get there in the end now, but my goodness, through the trial and tribulation in the last 7 months, how many Ukrainians have died as a result of trying everything else before getting to the point of realizing who Putin is? Just didn't you learn in 2018 in Helsinki that you are the puppet and Putin's the puppet master? If you've only just realised that, well, better late than never. But my goodness, what have you been doing for 7 months? So, good news that Indian states-run refineries have again temporarily suspended purchases, according to Bloomberg, of oil from Russia after Trump signed an executive order imposing additional 25% tariffs. I mean, this is good news in terms of that's well done from Trump in trying to force India's hand over support of Russia. I mean, I think he's wielding his executive orders far too liberally, and relying on emergency measures and whatnot. But anyway, this is good for Ukraine. Um, as an additional 25% tariffs on Indian goods for energy cooperation with Kremlin have been levied. Um, and then almost finally, we'll have that last. We'll go back to this one. This is worrying, and actually, it's happening not just in this context, but more widely by all accounts. So, the US is, and actually, we must also understand it's happening domestically. So, I think some very observant, meticulous people noted that the American government had accidentally omitted the part of the Constitution on the government website that talks about habeas corpus, following due process. So ICE arresting people on the streets without due process and then disappearing them off to El Salvador, where the Bukele, the leaders, made himself even more dictatorial. Anyway, how convenient that they've just missed out the paragraph about habeas corpus. That's really worrying. So human rights are going out the window domestically in the US. That seems to be a move. Um, but they're also apparently softening their approach to countries who do not adhere to basic human rights around the world, and that is a sign of things to come. And the only thing I can understand from that, the best conclusion is that the US wants to break human rights legislation, wants to carry out human rights abuses. You know, the best way to allow yourself to do that is to not have those expectations for anyone else. And then suddenly, oh yeah, no, we're okay with locking those people up and doing that to them and whatever. Wow. So what's happened here? Well, the Washington Post reports that Trump's administration plans to soften criticism of Russia on human rights. Trump's human rights report on Russia omits the Supreme Court's LGBTQ plus organization ban. So that is where the Russians have, due to traditional family values and whatnot, have prescribed sexual deviance, or as they would see it, so any kind of sexual liberation, I guess, as not just being kind of illegal, but being extremist terrorism. So if you're gay and you're advocating for homosexuality, then you are an extremist terrorist and you're locked up. Um, Now, normally, most modern Western nations would be like, that sucks. Uh, but the US has gone, no, we don't think that sucks. We're gonna leave that out of our report on the human rights of Russia because actually we would like to do that too. So that's really, really worrying. A former State Department official has called it a glaring omission, glaring and somewhat purposeful. And you go back to look at the omission of the habeas corpus on the government website as well. Now, we hear that a 22-year-old US Army soldier of El Paso, Texas, with top level security clearance, has been arrested on charges of attempting to transmit classified information about M1A2 Abrams tank to the Russian government in exchange for Russian citizenship, says Special Correspondent Cat. So, according to the allegations, in July, during an in person meeting with an individual believed to be a representative of the Russian government, the soldier handed over an SD card containing sensitive documents related to the M1A2 Abrams to another US armored fighting vehicle and details on combat operations. Following the meeting, he allegedly continued discussions about acquiring and providing a specific piece of internal hardware from the M1A2 Abrams to the Russian government. On July the 31st, 2025, the soldier delivered the hardware to a storage facility in El Paso, Texas. He later sent a message to the Russian contact stating mission accomplished. That is very, very worrying from an American point of view. Anyway, thanks very much for listening. I will endeavor to get you another video out shortly. I'm so sorry for all the mess ups. Take care, and I'll speak to you soon.